Hey guys, it's Deella. We had a great class yesterday and we did such a fun project. This is a travel photo brought in by one of our class members, and she took this at the Golden Gate Bridge when she and her husband were traveling there. And I really loved this angle because it's not the typical bridge shot that we see in tourist stuff. So all I've done so far is I have taped down my paper. I've used my graphite paper. By the way, something that gets asked in class a lot is about graphite paper and how to use it. So what I like to do is I like to tape my paper and my picture to each other and to my paper so that I can lift up either or both and I can check my progress. Now, I am using black graphite paper here also. Please reuse this over and over and over again. This is not a one and done kind of thing. You can use this like hundreds of times. So please do that. I am going to, I hope y'all don't mind. It's such a nice day that I am outside painting. Now, I have this sketched out kind of heavy so that you can see what I'm doing. But when you are tracing using graphite paper, try to use a light hand. They also make a plain gray graphite paper that you might want to check out in case. Okay, so first things first, I know that I want to block things in first because I know this bridge is very detailed and it's going to take me some time. So all I'm going to do first, I was painting pink stuff earlier, obviously, but that doesn't matter. I'm not going to worry about, you know, not getting sky color in my bridge because I actually want that sky color behind my bridge, right? So I know that the paint that I'm going to be putting onto my bridge is going to be thicker and more saturated than what I'm doing in the background. Now, the paper that I'm using today is cold press 100% cotton paper. I bought this paper on Temu. I'm not, you know, associating myself with them per se. I'm just saying that that's where I happen to get this paper. Now, this has been coming up a lot in class with paper because, you know, just kind of like the price of everything, 100% cotton paper has gotten quite expensive. And so what I have recommended to some of my students is to use your 100% cotton paper when you're doing a painting, when you're practicing, when you're doing exercises, or when you're doing watercolor techniques that are not going to require you to be really wet. Then go ahead and use student grade paper or whatnot. So all I've done, we are getting out of just using our primaries and we are into some of our convenience colors now. So I have a watery mix of cerulean blue, which is the typical sky blue. And this is a beautiful kind of sunny Bay Area day, perfect blue sky. It's just gorgeous. So it's probably 72 degrees, you know, just amazing. So what I'm doing is I'm basically just putting down a wash. I am going to be popping in some clouds as well. So I'm just going to, my paper is wet, but it's not as saturated as I would like it to be. So it's not absorbing as much as I would like. So no worries, I'm just gonna kind of have to work it a little bit. So all I've done is taken this cerulean blue. I do want it slightly darker at the top here. Okay, that's okay. And then just with my paper towel, I'm gonna pop in just some pretty puffy clouds. I already kind of have some going on just because, but it is a pretty, you know, gorgeous blue sky kind of day, California. All right, there we go. Sky is sorted. So next, in our reference photo, let me get rid of my graphite paper here so that I can show you. In our reference photo, in the mountains, there's like some more distant mountains and there are some that are a little bit closer. So I'm going to start with the distant mountains, and I am going to take a little bit of purple, again, convenience color here, and a little bit of Payne's gray. So I'm doing a grayed out purple, not super thick, not super thin. If we're gonna go with this milk theme, this would be skim milk, this would be maybe 2%, right? So I'm not gonna wet these mountains, but what I am going to do is I'm just gonna drop in my purple, and I'm not worried if it gets into my wet sky, because that's okay too. Okay. And I'm gonna come back over these, you know, distant hills here again in a minute. So I'm just kind of taking this purple and going along. All right. Now I'm going to take, you can use either sap or olive green. I have some olive green on my palette, and I'm gonna mix that in with the purple mix that I had, and maybe even add a little bit more purple to it. Now that's too much. My purple is super saturated, so you just have to be kind of cautious. And remember, because we're going to be framing to an 8x10, you can always test out your color kind of over to the side here. So based on my reference photo, I know that there's like darker stuff in front here. So I'm just gonna take this, and this is wet on wet because my mountain is wet, or my hill, or whatever it is. And I'm just gonna drop in some of this green and purple mixture to put some, sorry, there's a bug. Got it. All right. I was hoping that being the springtime weather that I could avoid the bugs for a minute, but no luck. They are very attracted to me. Okay, so that's really good enough for me. I don't think I need to do anything else there. All right, so next we need to block in kind of this side of the mountain. We're not going to worry about if we are painting over our bridge right now, because our colors will be light in the background. Our bridge colors will be more concentrated, so we're not going to have to worry about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same green purple mix that I have here. Let me just soften that out for a second. I'm okay with that bleeding a little bit like that. I just didn't want that one harsh thing. So you don't have to do that, but I had a big old mark there. And so I'm just drying off my brush. I'm okay with some of that being a reflection in the water, and I'm gonna leave it. But just drying off your brush with your paper towel, mopping up what you don't want before it totally stains your paper. That's the idea there. Okay, so here I'm gonna add some of my warm yellow to my purple and green mixture to make it a really neutral yellowy green. And then I'm going to use this very lightly, kind of to go over my earth, and then I will put in more of this green and shadows and things like that. But I want to get my highlight color in there first, which is this yellowy kind of greeny color. And it's okay if you're not mixing up all of it at once, you know what I mean? Because then you get more variation, and that's okay too. And I'm just bringing this all the way down because there's not a whole lot of exciting stuff going on in our foreground, and that's not really what the painting is about. And once we put our mat on this painting, some of that's going to go away. Now again, because I know that I'm going to be painting over this bridge, I can take some of that paint off the bridge and it's fine, right? I don't need green up in my sky. All right, so now, because I can see that in our reference photo, there are a lot of like gray, greeny, kind of shadowy things, while I have this yellow-ish tone here, I'm gonna go ahead and, okay, so I'm gonna take my kind of greeny color and try and start developing some of these curves. I am going to use some more of this like straight up green in my highlighted kind of areas where it's a little bit more verdant, right? And then I'll put a little bit more of the purple with my green. It really neutralizes it and it makes it like this perfect like browny green color. It's very nice for shadows. So I'm gonna start, you know, because I'm still wet and wet here, I can get away with just barely touching where I want my shadows to be here. And everybody has a little bit of a different hand, and so it's totally fine if yours doesn't look exactly like mine. The point is to get some of these shadows in here now while we can, and it's easy, right? Like, we don't need to make our life harder than it is. Let's get some of these shadows in here now. And we know that most of what's happening down here is going to be dark, so I'm okay with bringing some of my darks down here. I am going to pop in a little bit of gray, Payne's gray, in with this green, and I'm using olive green today. I think I used sap green in class, but it doesn't really matter. And so just, again, dabbing over here and getting some of these darks in, letting the water and the paper do some of this work for me so that I'm getting my shadows in now and I'm not having to work too hard at it. And you can see, because my paper is so wet, I'm barely touching it with pigment and letting it kind of do its thing. And that's cool, right? Like, that's all we need to do. I know too that down here, I have some rocky sorts of things going on. So I want to go ahead and, with my gray, green, purple combo, just start dropping in some of these darker bushes, the rocky things, all of that. And again, I'm really not trying to make this too detailed down here. It's not the important part of the picture, right? So I want to keep some shadow, some light, and just do that. Now, while I have my brush here, I'm just wiping it off and taking some of the pigment off of where I know my bridge is going to be. That way I still have the background color that I need on my bridge, but my bridge will be light enough that I'm not going to have to worry about seeing my red on top. So I'm just lightening up my paper. Be gentle though, please. Like, it's one of the things that I'm seeing a lot in class. We're having people just be, I mean, yes, be a little bit rough with your paper, but, you know, give it a break a little, you know? You gotta be able to come back and work on it more. So even if you're not, or even if you are using 100% cotton, it doesn't matter so much. You need to make sure that you're slightly gentle with your paper, right? You can't have it so wet and then scrubby and then this and that and the other, you know. So anyway, next thing we need to block in, and again, if you get drips like I just got, just wipe them off. Now's the time. Next, we can just take a strip of Payne's Gray here, and I'm not gonna even mix it. I'm just gonna put in my little path right here. I'm not even switching brushes. I'm not all that concerned. I don't want it too dark. I just want it to be blocked in. Okay, so there's our little road. Then down here is more rocky kind of green stuff, but I'm gonna fill that in a minute. And I'm okay with some of this bleeding happening here. I think that actually looks kind of cool. So I'm not gonna worry too much as I say that and I keep messing with it. Okay. The next thing I want to block in is my water. And I am going to go ahead and wet where my water will be. You can do this totally wet paint on dry paper. That's okay too. I think that's how I did it in class. I just am feeling like doing a little wet and wet for the water here. Now the important thing to remember with water is that it goes a certain way, right? If water's going up and down, there's like a problem in the world. So I'm gonna use my warm blue here, but I'm gonna mix it with just a little bit of Payne's Gray so that I have a blue gray. But you can really use either one of your blues. If you want to use the cool blue, you can do that. You want to use the warm blue, you can do that. So I've got wet. I know that my highlights are kind of coming through here and across the middle, so that's where I want to be the lightest on my hand with my water. So I'm going to just start moving across. Now, one good way to make waves is to kind of do a Y shape or a crisscrossy shape, but basically keeping everything horizontal. So I'm trying to keep some highlights here, kind of in the middle, which I didn't do a great job of at first, but I remembered, so there's something. Okay, and then I know that it's lighter in the middle. I know we have some shadowy stuff kind of happening around the rock, which we can enhance later. And then over here, I can just do like this. We don't need anything extra special there. I am gonna, just with my finger, take a little bit of that blue out of my road. Now I can come back again with some Payne's Gray here. Okay, so I've let things dry. I'm pretty dry here. I went in and put a little bit more purple in my background mountains. That's all I've done. I promise I am not holding out on you. Okay, so next thing we want to do is address our rock. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take some indigo, which is a mix of blue and black basically, and I'm gonna put some Payne's Gray in it, and I'm gonna have my mix be fairly thick, right? So I'm going to, it's not as thick as I would like. I'm gonna take some more of this indigo just straight out of the pan, and I'm gonna put this on my rock. And we actually have a couple of rocks here, which is cool. We will be adding some more of this there. But I have my handy dandy room key from the last time Steve and I went to hang out. For Valentine's Day, actually, we went to Unicoi State Park. But so I'm using this to scrape some of this paint. Now, this is basically getting the highlights on the rock, and this is really fun. I just dabbed it onto my paper towel, and I'm getting that second rock in there, and now just that third rock using this little tool that I have here. I think you can get some really nice realistic rock features this way. However, it's never going to be perfect. So at this point, this is why I used the indigo and not some of the other colors that I could have, like Payne's Gray or whatever. Now I'm just feathering that blue into this water because I know that this water up front is a little bit darker, and I can use some of this indigo in some of my other shadowy areas. So I'm just moistening my brush and going back in and trying to set this rock into the water. You know, give it a little cozy spot to nestle up. And then I'm drying my brush and I'm softening. Again, I'm not being too terribly rough with my paper. This is something that I saw people like legit tear their paper on, making rocks this way. So again, I just have a damp brush. I'm just kind of softening a couple of these areas. My brush is kind of a disaster. I need to get my lava soap out. So I don't want it over there. But also, just because I have this blue on my brush, I can use it just very sparingly to give me some more shadowy stuff in my water. Okay, so I'm okay with that. I'm going to use that same kind of indigo mix. I'm going to put in a little bit more Payne's Gray. And I'm just going to pop in. Okay, so see, I'm not as dry as I thought I was. I thought I was really pretty dry. I'm not quite that dry. But that's okay. I'm just kind of putting in this rocky shoreline here. I know that it's not all going to be this dark, and that I also need to add a little bit of warmth to this. But I'm getting the base kind of my rocky shore going on here. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick up a little of my warm brown here. I think this is burnt umber. And just on the tip of my brush, just warm up the shoreline a little bit. The value is still quite dark. That's a little bit too close to my road. I'm not leaving myself any room for road. The value is still similar, but I want to warm it up a little bit to go against the cool gray color of the rock. And because I toned down my warm blue for my water with gray, it's gone cool. And then indigo is cool as well. It has black mixed in it, so that's automatically going to make it cool. So, or maybe not automatically, but it makes it cool. So I want to make sure that I've got, oh my goodness, what is up with this brush? It's just being a redheaded stepchild. Well, I actually do know what's wrong with my brush, and it's actually the same thing that's wrong with all of my brushes right now. I was teaching a class where I was using drawing gum or masking fluid, or whatever you want to call it, and when I got home, it was everywhere. Like, I had apparently left it open a little bit. Now, I just have a little bit of Payne's Gray, and not everywhere, but I'm gonna start to try and find some of the edges, just very, very lightly here. Like, I barely have anything on my brush, and I'm just trying to find some of these edges of this road. Okay, kind of making, I put down a little color, I take up a little color, I put down a little color, I take up a little color. I just really want it very lightly defined, but it makes a big difference. And actually, I'm probably gonna just kind of make this all go dark back here. Like, okay, this is disappearing a little bit. What I have right here is actually this concrete, like, pillory thing. So I'm okay with just slapping in a little bit of gray here and calling it done. So I put, again, this is kind of the technique. You put in some color, you take off some color. You're barely painting at this point here. You're more trying to keep your darks where they're supposed to be darker and your light where it's supposed to be lighter. And here, the lighter part is on the front, even though it's, I'm not going to paint it exactly like this, right? It's just never going to look exactly like that because I don't want to get into that much detail. But I want a little bit of the lighter part to be coming from here, and then we need that corner, and that's about as much detail as I want to do. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now down here, and we can work on this a little bit more later too, but I see, just since I'm here, there are kind of like some bushy things. So there's some green things here that have kind of a purpley shadow to them, and it's a little bit more kind of a yellowy green along here. And remember, we want to get warmer as we come closer, so it's fine that we're getting a little bit lighter, a little bit yellower up here. There's even a little bit kind of a bushy thing going on here, which is cool. Okay, and then I'm just going to come back in with my neutralized kind of green. And I'm not, there's another little road going here. I'm not doing all that. Okay, that's just too many roads. So I'm just using my brush as a tool to come in with different colors and put in some of this dark. Now, we didn't do this in class because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do with my bridge. But now that I'm doing this again for another time, I'm okay with putting this stuff in a little bit because most of this is not going to be real noticeable. This is kind of just foreground foliage. This is not the important part of the story here. Okay, so again, I'm just kind of taking off some of the pigment that I got on my bridge. No biggie. There we go. But my background now is pretty much done. Even up here, I might put in a couple more details in the foreground. We'll see how the matte goes. But But on my road, what I'm noticing now that I've got other things blocked in is that it looks super, super pale. So I'm gonna take just my round brush. What I've done is I've kind of squeezed it to a flat. Now, of course, you can use a flat brush for this, but if you don't want to change, you can just do that, and then just barely any paint. I am hinting at kind of some grooves in the road. I'm basically dry brushing my road here a little bit to give it some texture. I'm just dipping my brush in some water to smooth that out a little bit. And that gives us a much more realistic road. And because I got all up in this bush, I'm just gonna tap some more green in. No biggie. Okay. So now we're looking really good with pretty much everything except for our bridge. So that's the big thing. And I am not going to make you watch me paint all of it, but I will let you watch me paint some of it. Okay. Okay, now we're gonna get started on our bridge. I probably won't make you watch me paint all of the bridge because there's a lot of details, or maybe I'll speed it up, I don't know. But first let's talk about the color mixing theory here. Even though, and I have traced over this to get my drawing done, so we can see though that this is a warm red, and part of it may be just because the sun is beating on it all the time, but there's kind of some rusty colors, there's some warm red. So I'm gonna start with warm red. I was trying to do swatches on the back of this, which was just bleeding through. So I have a scrap of watercolor paper here so we can talk about the color. I'm gonna start with the Pyrrole Red, which is my warm red. This is a Daniel Smith color. And while I think that's really great, it's also super vibrant for the whole thing. But I know that I want some of those areas more orangey. So I added a little bit of New Gamboge, which is my warm yellow, to the mix, and I really like that for my highlight areas. But then I decided to, for my kind of rustier areas, add a drop of purple and some quinacridone gold. So these are the colors that I'm using for the bridge. But bottom line, I want this range of colors from this really sunny to kind of a basic red to a very rusty, darker red. And then we'll be coming back afterwards and adding in our shadows. So don't worry about the shadows first. Go ahead and paint your bridge. Use thicker paint, right? So again, if we're kind of like talking about the milk thing, we want like whole milk, heavy cream consistency. So I'm gonna get started. Remember, the bridge gets darker and cooler as we go back. So in my very back areas, I'm gonna add a little bit of purple to my rusty color, and I'm gonna start there. I'm using, by the way, I'm using a detail brush. This is a #1 Paul Cézanne, and then it's a synthetic squirrel. I will also probably be using a liner brush at some point. I don't know yet, but just so you know, I am down to a detail brush, and my paper is bone dry. I have a little bit of dampness down here, but everything else, everything in my bridge area is completely dry, and that's really important when we're starting on these very fine details. So again, I'm probably not going to make you watch me paint all of these fine details. That way I can, you know, listen to music without being booted off of YouTube. Okay, so while I'm doing this, I will probably be jamming out, and I will you know, maybe speed this part up so you're not completely, totally bored. I am keeping, though, just so you know, even though I have this traced out, I am keeping my reference photo really close so that I know when I'm putting these details in that I'm doing it right. So even though this is going to be my darkest one and I'm not seeing a huge difference in the reference photo, I am going to get more vibrant as I come up, just because as a painter, I know that that's how the world should work. Is that how it works in photos? Not necessarily. Now remember, with smaller brushes like this too, it's just, even though a detail brush has a bigger barrel than a liner brush, you will have to go back to your paint well more often. So don't let that discourage you or let you think that you're not doing something right. You are. It's okay. You know, there's just a smaller brush, so there's less paint. So, and there's also less water. So even though we're using thicker paint, we still have to have enough water on our brush to let the paint flow, right? So this is what we're doing. We are filling in details here. And I might come back in at the very end, and instead of trying to put all these little wires and stuff on with a brush, I might come back in with a pen. So in class, we talked about signing paintings, and one of the things that I do, see, I knew that there's a shadow under here, and so I'm just adding a little bit of purple in this shadow area to help it to sit better. I'm not done with the whole thing. I just knew that that needed to happen, so I did that while I was there. But anyway, we were talking about signing paintings, and with watercolor paintings, and especially when I'm working in an 8x10 sort of size like this, I don't necessarily sign with a brush, just because it's tiny and it's easier to sign with a pen. And so it's important that you sign with an archival pen. That means that it's acid free, it's not going to rot your painting or anything like that. Okay, so that's good enough for me. This is pretty much okay with me. I might just, you know, kind of darken up some of the sides to tie this in a little bit with the rest of the bridge, but I mean, it doesn't actually look like that. There are, though, and I can throw a little bit of gray on my brush to do this. There are some like little pylon things right here. They kind of go there, and then really just taking everything off my brush that I can, drying it again, smoothing it out a little bit, just to make this look like a rocky surface. It's probably concrete, but you know what I mean. Okay, now I'm ready to get back to my red. Again, you really want to have thick paint, drier brush. I'm just going to be swooping these things back here, right? Because it's so tiny, we can't even see it from, you know, it's tiny, tiny, tiny. So here we go. Now let's do this kind of longer expanse. I think the hardest part is done, being back here. I'm not going to worry about some of the details on the bridge, right? I mean, we are not trying to be photorealistic. We're not trying to recreate this bridge or teach someone how to do it. But I am using, it's almost a mix of the yellowy and the rusty mix that I made. It's kind of what I'm doing, and I'm really liking it, so I'm not gonna get crazy and try to do a bunch of different stuff. Oh. No. You're gonna go back inside if you keep this up. Because I don't want to hear about it. Oh. No. You're gonna go back inside if you keep this up. Because I don't want to hear about it. I'm back. I forgot to hit record when I sat down. I have put in this back kind of railing. It doesn't show up very well in the picture, but I know it's there and it makes the bridge look a little bit more 3D. So I'm just gonna roll with it. So my goal now, these are basically V's with, or M's, right? So I know that I am probably not going to want to get detailed back here, so I'm just going to go back in here, trying to keep my finger out of what I just painted, using my knuckle to support myself with this very detailed work, and just up and down, just with the very tip. I don't care if my lines are even solid. I just want to hint that this is what's happening back here. So this is the time where, you know, our tongues start sticking out and we start getting really into our zone. So I'm gonna zone out and you can watch me, but I will probably increase the speed of the video so that you don't have to hear me talk like we're doing meditation for the 20 minutes it's gonna take me to do this. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I have been kind of spacing out and, you know, going over details, but I've just been basically doing details. So I darkened some of this shape under here, wanting to make different colors, just variations of the same that we mixed up in the beginning. I let a little bit of mud happen with some Payne's Gray as I kind of washed this area out a little bit, and then I went back in with just some more of my color and redefined some of the shapes. What else? I just darkened up my horizon line a little bit and took a touch of this warm color and put it right here just to tie the color in a little bit. So we're moving the eye along. But that's pretty much it. I'm pretty much done. The only other thing left to do is to, you know, put our mat down, sign our name, and if you would like, you can use your pen to do the details.